The never-ending story of Brexit continues. December 12th, 2019. The result of the general election in Great Britain shows Boris Johnson's party as the clear winner. After counting all 650 constituencies, the Tories have received 365 seats in the lower house. The Labour Party will occupy 203. The Conservatives won an absolute majority with that, and Boris Johnson can use this majority to push ahead with his Brexit plans. December 20th, 2019. 358 MPs in the British House of Commons vote for British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's draft exit agreement, confirming his Brexit course. 234 MPs are against. The British now want to leave EU on January 31st. January 22nd. After the lower house, the British upper house now also approves the Brexit agreement, so Brexit can come on January 31st. Changes made to the bill by the Lords in the House of Lords have previously been reversed by the House of Commons. The House of Lords is now finally giving way. Among other things, the changes provided that EU citizens living in Great Britain should automatically receive a right of residence for the period after Brexit. However, the UK government rejects this point. EU citizens in the UK now have until the end of 2020 to apply for a residence permit. January 29th. 2 days before Brexit, the European Union's divorce treaty with Great Britain cleared a decisive hurdle. The European Parliament voted on the more than 500-page agreement that evening. The result was clear. 621 MEPs vote for the exit agreement, 49 against and 13 abstained. January 31st. It is a historic day for both Great Britain and the European Union. The UK officially left the EU on this date at midnight, CET, after 47 years of membership. After the loss of the British, a transition phase will begin that will last until December 31st. During this transition phase, however, the UK must adhere to all EU rules. Difficult negotiations between the European Union and Great Britain on further relations between the two parties are also pending in the following weeks and months. It's already becoming apparent that these negotiations could turn out to be very difficult. The danger of a hard Brexit, that means an exit from the EU without an agreement, therefore continues to exist. The Europeans only want to grant Great Britain access to the internal market if the country is committed to EU competition rules. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson does not want to give exactly these guarantees. He wanted an agreement like Canada +++ without additional conditions. The subject of Brexit remains topical. February 19th in 2020. A good 3 weeks after the UK left the EU, the British government is introducing a new immigration system. From 2021, there will be strict controls over who is allowed to immigrate to Great Britain and who is not, as the previous immigration system, distorted by the free movement of people in the EU, has not met the wishes of the majority of the British people. June 12th. Great Britain will not extend the transition phase beyond the end of the year until it leaves the European Union. This was announced by Cabinet Minister Michael Gove in London. He said, "I formally confirm that the UK will not extend the transition period. The time for an extension has passed. On January 1st, we will take back control and regain our political and economic independence," tweeted Gove. This increases the pressure to reach an agreement on future relations between the UK and the EU by the end of the year. Great Britain left the EU at the end of January, but remains in a transitional phase in the EU internal market and in the customs union. The EU was in favor of extending the deadline to allow more time for negotiations. September 7th. The British Prime Minister is on the offensive. Johnson wants to bring the deadlocked free trade talks with the EU to an end and is on a confrontational course. Shortly before the 8th round of negotiations in London, Johnson gives the EU an ultimatum. "We need the agreement with our European friends by the EU summit on October 15th if it is to come into force at the end of the year," he said. "It makes no sense to think about a schedule that extends beyond this point. If we don't come to an agreement by then, I don't see a free trade agreement between us," says Johnson, "and we should both accept that and look ahead." In terms of content, neither the October deadline nor the no-deal threat are new. The two chief negotiators, Michel Barnier and David Frost, have not said anything else for months. October 1st in 2020. The EU Commission has formally lodged a complaint against the British Internal Market Act. In doing so, the Commission has followed through on its threat. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announces that legal action has been taken against Great Britain because of the breach of the Brexit agreement. The formal complaint is directed against the British Single Market Act, which undermines parts of the Northern Ireland Johnson Protocol. According to von der Leyen, the bill in its nature violates the exit agreement. October 2nd, 2020. In the Brexit dispute, the last round of negotiations for the time being did not bring about a breakthrough. EU negotiator Michel Barnier said after the meeting, the EU and the UK continue to have serious differences on the main points of contention. A senior EU representative said that there was growing skepticism among the 27 states as to whether a deal with London was still possible. MEPs made similar statements. October 6th in 2020. The time for an agreement between the EU and the UK is running out. The countdown to a Brexit without a treaty is running. Prime Minister Boris Johnson had set a negotiation deadline of October 15th, the ninth round of negotiations having recently ended without a breakthrough. Experts expect the talks to possibly drag on into the first week of November. EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier travelled to Berlin to find a way out of the problems with the United Kingdom at the last minute with Chancellor Angela Merkel and Foreign Minister Heiko Maas. Germany currently holds the EU Council presidency and, given its economic weight, plays a key role. But the best diplomatic skills fail when the political will to find an amicable solution is not there. British Prime Minister Johnson, despite a phone call with Commission President Ursula von der Leyen at the weekend, showed no will to withdraw his controversial internal market law. October 11th. The Brexit negotiations between the EU and Great Britain are still not making good progress. In a telephone conversation with Merkel about the intended Brexit trade pact, Johnson emphasized that a deal would be positive for both sides. But Downing Street is probably also prepared to end the transition phase without an agreement, which was a lie, as we all know. October 20th. The British Prime Minister continues to demonstrate harshness in the Brexit dispute with the EU over a trade deal. After a phone call with the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, Boris Johnson had a spokesman say that the talks with the EU are de facto over, because the EU is not prepared to change its negotiating position. Accordingly, a hard Brexit threatens at this point in time. EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier had announced via Twitter that the international community was ready to intensify the free trade talks in London this week on all topics and based on treaty texts. October 23rd. Japan and Great Britain agree on a bilateral free trade agreement that will apply after the current Brexit transition phase has expired. Japan's Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi and the British Minister for International Trade Liz Truss sign an agreement in Tokyo. In doing so, they pave the way for the agreement to come into force on January 1st, 2021. Both states want to ensure continuity in trade and investments after London leaves the European Union. The agreement, which largely corresponds to the existing free trade agreement, copy and paste, between Japan and the EU must first be ratified by the parliaments of both countries. Well, Japan will be very happy about that one, so it all happened. November 9th, US election with Joe Biden as winner. The election of Joe Biden as US President increases pressure on British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to conclude a trade deal with the EU. The new man in the White House is not a Brexit fan like incumbent President Donald Trump, but has long viewed Britain's departure from its European neighbours as a mistake. A failure for the talks with Brussels would therefore, according to experts, also put a strain on the special relationship with Washington. A no-deal Brexit would mean massive friction with the White House, says Mujtaba Rahman from the Eurasia Group think tank. The people around Biden already see Johnson as Trump light. With a no deal, he would alienate them even further. Johnson has an interest in building a constructive relationship with the new US president, says Simon Fraser, partner at consulting firm Flint Global. A no-deal Brexit would be the worst debut. Biden would have no understanding for that. November 12th in 2020. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's chief communications officer Lee Kane is stepping down from office. The exit of the hardliner weakens the Brexit camp on Downing Street. Kane was an important representative of the Vote Leave camp, the sworn force around Chief Advisor Dominic Cummings that won the Brexit referendum in 2016 and brought Johnson to power in 2019. November 13th in 2020. Shortly after the resignation of Boris Johnson's head of communications, Lee Kane, Johnson's chief advisor Dominic Cummings is stepping down as well. The reason for this development is probably a power struggle in the British government, or in number 10. Prime Minister Boris Johnson supposedly wants to become more liberal and greener. Cummings and Kane were the two leading figures in the Vote Leave camp at government headquarters. November 16th in 2020. In the final phase of the Brexit negotiations, the UK is signalling to the EU that the UK can do without a trade agreement with the European Union. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced that he will not accept proposals that undermine Britain's sovereign rights. If the EU does not accept the country's sovereign rights, Great Britain will be content with a status of trade relations with the EU similar to that of Australia, although he never would have gotten Australia then, only Mongolia. The Prime Minister is confident that his country will flourish even then. November 21st. Great Britain and Canada sign a trade agreement. The UK can trade with Canada after Brexit on the same terms as before. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his Canadian colleague Justin Trudeau previously agreed on a video link on a preliminary free trade agreement that continues the advantages of the EU-Canada CETA agreement. Copy and paste once again. The deal safeguards transatlantic trade with one of its closest allies, Johnson said. British Trade Secretary Liz Truss writes in the Daily Telegraph that the deal will bring Great Britain one step closer to the Trans-Pacific Partnership TPP, a trade alliance made up of 11 countries in the Pacific region. In October, Great Britain had already signed a trade agreement with TPP member Japan. Yeah, Japan loves that. November 30th. Time is running out. Great Britain will leave the European single market in a month, and it's still not clear whether there will then be a free trade agreement between the UK and the EU. Companies in Great Britain and the European Union are following the Brexit negotiations with growing nervousness. The free trade talks are going into what may be the decisive round in London. This is the last week or so, said British Foreign Minister Dominic Raab to Sky News. However, he is confident that an agreement can be reached. The mutual interest in a deal is very great. December 2nd in 2020. Doubts about a Brexit deal have put sterling under pressure. The British currency fell by up to 0.6% to $1.3336. At times it cost less against the euro than it has been since the beginning of November. British securities are also extremely cheap by international standards because of the Brexit uncertainty. Equity professionals smell Brexit bargains. An agreement between the EU and Great Britain for the time after the final Brexit is still pending, according to a senior EU diplomat. According to chief negotiator Michel Barnier, there are still differences in the three sticking points, said an insider to Reuters on that Wednesday. But he wanted to remain anonymous. A report on that Tuesday evening gave hope that the negotiations between Great Britain and the EU on future relations had entered the tunnel phase. This is the name of the decisive phase of negotiations in which the parties strive for a solution with the greatest possible secrecy. December 7th, 2020. The British and other Europeans have made significant progress in the Brexit negotiations over the past few weeks. According to diplomats, the text of the treaty for the free trade agreement, which is several hundred pages long, is 98% ready. However, three key issues remain to be resolved: fisheries, fair competition, and punitive tariffs. According to diplomats, there must be progress on the three issues this Monday, because at 5 p.m. Johnson and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen are on the phone to decide whether it makes sense to continue the talks. An agreement should be reached by the EU summit on that Thursday, which the EU heads of government could then approve. December 13th in 2020. According to information from EU circles, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson apparently want to agree on a continuation of the Brexit talks. So far, December 13th has been the last date for an agreement between the EU and the UK. This gives rise to new hope for an agreement, because only 2 days earlier von der Leyen and Johnson had said that they expected the UK and the EU to be without a trade agreement from January 1st. So that there is no Brexit deal between the EU and the UK. So far, the phase in which the British can still apply EU rules for the internal market after Brexit officially ends on December 31st. December 17th. The EU Parliament sets the Brexit deadline for Sunday, December 20th. So the Parliament gives the negotiations on a possible Brexit trade pact until that Sunday. If a finished text is available by midnight, one is ready to schedule a special session for ratification, according to a resolution by the parliamentary leaders on that Thursday. So far, however, no breakthrough is in sight. There were still differences on one of the main points of contention, the question of future fishing quotas. EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier told MPs on that Thursday that a deal was possible but difficult, especially on the subject of fishing. A spokesman for Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the British side continued to try to resolve differences, but it is most likely that the transition phase will end without a trade agreement. December 24th, 2020. Merry Christmas. A week before the end of the transition period, the British Europeans finally agree on a free trade agreement on Christmas Eve. This also ends the second part of the Brexit negotiations and averted a disorderly Brexit at the last minute. The trade talks began immediately after the UK left on January 31st. Right from the start, the two central points of contention that were to accompany the talks until the last day became clear: fishing and fair competition. The EU wanted to secure long-term access for its fishermen to British fishing grounds, while the UK wanted to demonstrate its new sovereignty over its own coastal waters. When it comes to competition rules, the EU insisted on a binding commitment to common minimum standards, but the Kingdom did not want to have its hands tied permanently by the EU. And what was the result? European fishermen forego 25% of their catch. The quotas will be gradually reduced over 5.5 years. Thereafter, renegotiations will take place. The British fishermen will then be able to catch a total of 160 million euros more fish a year. Federal Minister of Agriculture Julia Klöckner had already announced financial aid for the German North Sea fishermen. December 30th. The British House of Commons has approved the Brexit trade pact with an overwhelming majority. The MPs voted on Wednesday in the second reading with 521 votes to 73 for the EU law presented by Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Before that, however, there had been sharp criticism of the thin deal that the Conservative government negotiated with Brussels. Johnson's predecessor Theresa May did not miss the unique opportunity to tear up the agreement of her former tormentor. We have a deal on trade in goods that benefits the EU, but not a deal on services that would have benefited the UK, said the former Prime Minister. May's stinging criticism culminated in the 5-hour ratification debate in the House of Commons, because she summed up the shortcomings of the free trade agreement. In her view, not only do the services fall short, but the former Interior Minister also considers the exit from the European databases for the fight against crime to be a big mistake. During her term in office, a better deal was on the table at the beginning of 2019, May said, in the direction of the Labour opposition. January 1st, 2021. Great Britain has left the EU for good. The country has been out of the internal market and the customs union since midnight. Now the question arises, what does Boris Johnson want to do with the new freedom? The moment is finally here, now we have to seize it, said the Prime Minister that week after Parliament passed the free trade agreement with the EU. The fate of this great country is in our hands. Johnson is betting that things can only go up after the corona year. Brexit should take a back seat. Instead, he wants to set new accents in foreign and domestic politics, and I made some videos about this already. January 8th. UK exporters are complaining about the additional formalities involved in trading with Northern Ireland, with many having suspended deliveries for the time being. Trucks are turned back at the ports because they do not have the correct papers with them. The Irish Sea and the English Channel are the new hotspots in Britain foreign trade. Retailers, freight forwarders and fishermen are complaining about the Brexit bureaucracy. Even large corporations seem surprised by the new rules, which are only new to the UK. The duty-free arrangement agreed with the EU does not apply to goods that are imported and then immediately exported again. Duty-free doesn't feel like duty-free when you read the fine print, said Steve Rowe, CEO of the UK department store chain Marks & Spencer. Yeah, it's tariff-free, not duty-free. The conversion of the supply chains due to the rules of origin will significantly burden businesses in Ireland, the Czech Republic and France. April 27th. After months of scrutiny, the EU Parliament approves the trade agreement with the UK. Brussels and London had agreed on the agreement before the end of the Brexit transition period at the end of December 2020. It has been applied provisionally since then. The EU Parliament took 4 months to examine the text. How long did the House of Commons did that again? The most important point of the treaty is to avoid tariffs, allow unlimited trade in both directions and limit frictional losses as much as possible. However, there are still customs formalities and checks. Among other things, it checks whether products are really mainly manufactured in Great Britain and whether food meets the required standards. The contract also includes rules on fishing and cooperation on energy, transport, justice, police and many other topics. With the pact, Great Britain gains access to the EU internal market. In return, the EU demanded fair competition, the so-called level playing field. What is meant are the same environmental, social and subsidy standards. An important sticking point in the negotiations was the access of EU fishermen to British waters. A transition period of 5.5 years, as I said, was agreed, and during which EU fishermen are allowed to fish 25% less in British waters. This should then be determined annually. From the French point of view, however, there are problems and delays in implementation. It also regulates an arbitration tribunal composed of both sides. If one side violates the agreement, the other side can levy tariffs or limit imports. This could cause great damage to the EU or Great Britain. June 24th, 2021. The economic problems are increasing, new customs hurdles and the threat of a shortage of skilled workers are there. 6 months after separating from the EU internal market, the economy draws a critical Brexit conclusion. The first few months showed no positive trends, said Jörg Alexander von Massenbach of the British Chamber of Commerce in Germany. On the contrary, I would have expected more pragmatism here, but both sides seem unwilling to compromise. Well, there is a deal. After 6 months, it is foreseeable that there will be permanent problems. Because of new customs requirements, new to the UK, effort and costs are higher, said Ulrich Hoppe, head of the German-British Chamber of Commerce in London. It's unclear when supply chains will operate as smoothly again as they did before December 31st. That is why many companies have invested in longer-term storage capacities, among other things, said Hoppe. That drives up costs and dampens economic growth in the first quarter by 1 percentage point, estimates the consulting firm KPMG. There is currently a particularly shortage of workers. The hospitality industry, for example, is particularly affected as it lost a number of EU staff due to the corona crisis, of which only part will probably return after the pandemic. The local employees cannot make up for the deficit. Agriculture and care are other areas where skilled workers from the EU are lacking. And not to forget Northern Ireland, but about the workers and everything else, I'm doing videos at the moment regularly, you know that. So that was, until almost now, the recap of Brexit from 2013 to 2021. The way it's going on, I'm absolutely sure that next year I will have to add another chapter to this little series, which is now a 2-part series, but next year probably will be a 3-part series. But I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.